So, good day to everyone. Our topic for this video material is all about the general principles and the concepts of taxation. So more specifically, tatakal natin yung inherent powers of the state as well as the nature of taxation power and its characteristics. Okay, so we are also going to distinguish the three inherent powers of the state as well as their similarities. Now allow me to share my screen. I have here the general principles. Okay, so in general principles. So we have here the three inherent powers of the state. So when a sovereign state is born, it exists with indispensable powers necessary for its survival. So these powers are called inherent powers. Okay? So they naturally exist as essential force in order that a government can command, maintain peace and order, and survive irrespective of any constitutional provisions. So the three inherent powers of the state are police power, eminent domain power, and taxation power. So police power, it is the power to protect citizens and provide for safety and welfare of the society. So that's really the power of police, okay, to protect all the Filipinos and to provide a safety environment for all of us. Okay, so that's the function of police power for protection and safety. Now, for eminent domain, it is the power to take private property with just compensation. Okay, they want to expropriate property, but not just expropriating, they also pay, okay, just compensation, which is equivalent to the fair value of the property. Ano yung purpose? For public use. Whenever kailangan talaga siya ng society or ng isang place, kukunin niya at gagamitan niya ng eminent domain power. Okay? So, pero yung owner naman of the property, uh, which is being expropriated by the government will be given just compensation. And the last but not the least inherent power of the state is the power to enforce contributions to support the government and other inherent powers of the state, which is the taxation power. Okay, so taxation power is they enforce contribution. What is the purpose of this contribution? To support the government. Aside from the government, the other inherent powers of the state, which is the police power and taxation power. So we have distinctions among the inherent powers of the state. So the nature of the power to tax, the police power, and eminent domain. And as to the power to tax, okay, the power is to enforce contribution. Why? To raise government funds. Okay, so kailangan kasi ng fund ng government para din um, mag-function sila, okay, as to their purpose. Okay, we have different government agencies, right? And different government agencies has different purpose. And they have also different projects, okay, for the welfare. So yan yung kailangan, okay? Kailangan ng tax to raise government funds and these funds will be used to different projects. We have also police power. A nature ng police power is to make and implement laws for the general welfare, for the security and safety of all the Filipinos here in the Philippines. And for the eminent domain, this is the power to take private property for public use and with just compensation. Now, the authority for the power to tax, government lang, as well as the police power. But in eminent domain, it may be granted to public service or utility companies. So if it is really needed, for example, public utility transportation, kailangan talaga lagyan ng public utility transportation. So hindi na uh, yung may authority is yung government. So it could be granted also for public service or utility companies if nakakatulong naman talaga siya in the development of the certain place. Next is the purpose. The purpose of power to tax is for the support of the government. Okay? So kailangan ng funds para sa government, para makagalaw ang government and to defray its functions. For the police power, it's the promotion of general welfare through regulation. So regulation, so we have different laws, okay, that needs to be abided by the citizens. Ayan, and these laws are made for the protection of them. And for eminent domain, taking of private property for public use. Yan yung pinaka-purpose niya. Okay? For public use, gagamitin ng lahat. And the owner will be given just compensation, which is equivalent to the value of the property, usually fair market value. So sino-sino yung persons affected nito? Okay, so power to tax the community or a class of individuals. As long as you are liable to pay tax, then you will be affected by the tax power. Okay, and it applies to all persons, not only person but also to property. May mga property kasi tayong nilalagyan ng tax. Okay, and for example, mga donations. Ayan, as to transfer taxes, business taxes, mga VAT, value-added taxes natin. Ay, it could also be exercises that may be subject thereto. Okay, so ang daming types ng taxes. Income, estate, donors, value-added, percentage taxes, capital gains taxes, final taxes. So matatakal natin yan when we go beyond our topic. Now for police power. The persons affected is the community or class of individuals also, and it applies to all persons. Hindi lang person, kundi property and exercises that may subject, okay, thereto. While on the eminent domain, sino yung affected dito? Yung individual as the owner of that private property. Only property is comprehended. Okay? So yung affected property lang as well as the owner yung affected dito sa transaction ng eminent domain. Okay, as to the type of property, sa tax naman, the property is wholesome and is devoted for public use or purpose. While for the police power, property is noxious or intended for a noxious purpose and as such taken and destroyed. If that halimbawa, i-exercise kasi ng police power if ever that business is non-compliant. Lalong-lalo na kapag ang subject or the object of the business is illegal. So it could be destroyed, okay, through police power. So i-confiscate lahat ng properties involved in that illegal transactions in favor of the government. So i-confiscate yan ng government. So yan yung ginaminsyaan na it could be destroyed. Okay? So eminent domain, the property is wholesome and it's also devoted for public use or purpose. Now, what is the effect of the power to tax? The contribution becomes part of the public fund. Magiging pondo yan ng gobyerno at ito yung gagamitin nila in funding projects. Okay? Ginagamit din nila yan. Okay, pang prepare for the next national budget and every year. Okay? So aside from that, we have police power, no transfer or title. There may be just a restraint on injurious use of the property. Okay, so that's the effect. So if ever you violated the laws, ayan, so you will be sanctioned, okay, or you should face the consequences. Kapag eminent domain naman, there is a transfer of title of the property kasi kukunin yan in favor of the government for public purpose. So what are the rights affected? So power to tax is the property right. For the police power, the property right and liberty. Okay. And sa eminent domain is the property rights. Okay. Next is scope. Plenary as to the power of tax, comprehensive siya, and supreme. While on the police power, broader siya in application, general power to make and implement the law. While in eminent domain, merely a power to take private property lang. So yung pinaka-power, yung pinaka-mas ma-broad yung scope talaga is the power to tax since it is very comprehensive. Okay? As long as you are liable to pay taxes, then magbabayad ka talaga ng tax. Ang police power is broader, Len, pero ang pinaka-ano niya, function is to implement the law. And whoever violated the law will be sanctioned and penalized. Okay? Next, the benefits received. So sa power to tax, inform of protection and benefits received from the government. So kung ano yung binabayad na tax ng ng Pilipinas or ng mga taxpayers dito sa Pilipinas, ginagamit yan. Okay, to the different projects of the different government agencies and local government units. So, nafe-feel natin yan kapag may mga construction of bridges, roads, and any projects ng government, yun na yun. Okay? Actually, yun yung binayad na taxes ng mga taxpayers. Sa police power naman, there is no direct and immediate benefit, but only such as may arise from the maintenance of a healthy economic standard of society. Wala namang direct immediate benefit dito. Pero ang pinakagulan talaga ng police power is to maintain a healthy and economic standard of society. And sa eminent domain, the market value of the property taken, yan yung benefits received ng owner. Kasi babayaran yan with just compensation ng government. As to the amount of its imposition, wala pong limit ang power to tax. Kasi nga, it can tax anything. Okay? Kasi nga, yan yung pinaka-powerful. Pero because the power to tax is so powerful and broad in scope, ginawa ay yung mga limitation or yung constitution para to limit the power to tax. To regulate lang naman. Okay? Pero as to the imposition, no limit. Actually, he who can give more shall also give more. So yan yung isa sa principle ng power to tax. Okay, kapag marami kang property, ayun, you will also be paying a higher tax liability. Example, may binabayaran kasi yung mga mayayaman na property tax at the beginning of the year. Kasi natin malalaki yung business mo at maraming income. So, na-align din doon yung tax liability mo. Okay? For the police power, sufficient lang siya to cover the cost of the license and the necessary expenses of police surveillance and regulation. While on the eminent domain, wala siyang imposition, the owner lang is paid to the fair value of the property. Now, let us proceed with the objectives in the exercise of the taxing power. Okay, so we have here for revenue purposes, regulatory purpose, and compensatory purpose. Now, for revenue purposes, the primary purpose of taxation is to raise revenue by collecting funds or property for the support of the government in promoting the general welfare and protecting its inhabitants. Now, the fiscal policy of the government is based on the rule that receipts or revenue should be equal to the annual government expenditures. Yan yung isa sa objective ng tax, taxing power for revenue purposes. And they have or they want, or they just want to make sure na yung revenue na makokolekta nila is equal or in excess with the government expenditures or expenses. So the significant portion of the required receipts is raised from taxation. Yes, majority talaga ng funds ng government is from tax. Okay, kaya nga ayaw ni BIR na hindi nagbabayad ng tax ang taxpayer. Okay, so if hindi nagbabayad or delinquent, gagawin talaga yung any means, to collect. Ayan. So, that's revenue purposes. Now, for the regulatory purpose, this is also known as sumptuary, which is the second objective in imposing tax. This objective is accomplished to deregulate the inflation. Okay, so the amount of taxes may be increased kasi to curb spending power and minimize inflation in times of prosperity. It may be reduced to expand business, and ward off depression in times of declining economic condition. Okay, so that's the ano, one of the objective to regulate the inflation. Okay, ayan. I-increase yung tax, okay, to minimize inflation. Ayan. And it will also be reduced to expand business and ward of depression. So, i-reduce naman yan. Okay? Just like for example, yung mga foreigners, okay, foreign investors, may mga privileges na binibigay ang government para lang hindi sila hesitant to do business here in the Philippines. So, may mga times na exempt sila on some other transactions. Okay? So, ang gusto naman din kasi, di ba, malaking tulong naman din kasi yung mga foreign investor kasi they create employment. So, when they create employment, yung mga unemployed dito sa Pilipinas, nagkakaroon ng trabaho because of the foreigners or foreign business partnerships. That is why binibigyan sila ng government ng privilege to be exempt on some other transactions. So that's the ano. Okay? So ayan. Taxes may be imposed to encourage economic growth by granting tax exemptions, tax relief, and incentives to attract investment that will create employment. So yun yung sinasabi ko kanina. Okay? It may be implemented to serve the general welfare of the people in promoting science and invention, or in financing educational activities, or in improving the efficiency of local forces to maintain peace and order through grant of subsidy. Okay? So, ayan. It could also be accomplished to achieve economic and social stability. Okay? So, ayan. And it also serves as a key instrument for social control. Okay? So it is an instrument to encourage foreign trade by providing tax incentives. Why? To protect local industries. Okay? To against foreign competition by imposing additional taxes on imported goods. So if mapapansin ninyo, wala masyadong made in the Philippines na mga products na readily made available in the market, puro made in China. Isa to sa mga objectives ng taxing power, okay, which is a regulatory purpose that serve as a key instrument for social control. So if ever kasi, 'di ba, kayong mga foreign investors na puput up ng business dito is binibigyan ng mga tax incentives or privileges, magpo-promote talaga yan ng unfair competition. Okay? Tingnan niyo yung mga produkto ng taga-ibang bansa, napakamura. So if napakamura, yun yung bigay dito sa Pilipinas. So may tendency talaga na yun yung ipapatronize ng mga Pilipino. So kaya nagbibigay ng mga import duties, ayan, ng mga taxes or excise taxes doon sa mga bagay na binibenta nila dito sa Pilipinas para magkaroon ng social control. Okay? Isa dyan, yung example is discriminatory duty. These are special duty that is designed to offset any foreign discrimination, okay, against our local commerce. May countervailing duty din siya, okay, that is imposed to offset any foreign subsidy granted to imported goods, okay, to the prejudice, okay, of our local industries. Aside from that, marking duty, which is generally imposed to or as additional duty tax to import articles with improper classifications or markings. And dumping duties, this is additional duty taxes imposed on imported goods with lower prices compared to the fair market value to protect local industries. Okay, China talaga no, napakamura ng mga products nila. Kaya ang ginagawa ng government, nag-i-impose sila ng mga dumping duties, okay, to impose or to create social stability din. Okay, na hindi siya mag-create ng unfair competition to the Filipino business owners. And we have also this compensatory purpose. Taxation is a way of giving back the expected economic and social benefit due to the inhabitants. An example. So an excise tax on gasoline consumed is imposed on vehicle owners, okay, using roads. Ayan, in this case, the tax is compensatory for the use of the road. So taxation is a way of giving back. Ayan. And it may be imposed for equitable distribution of wealth and income in the society. So in income taxation, higher taxes are collected for those who earn more, okay, and use the funds collected for the welfare of the people in general. This is in accordance with the ano equality or theoretical justice. So whoever who has a higher income should also pay a higher tax liability. So that's ang isang tawag dyan is progressive tax system. Okay, kung mataas ang income mo, mataas din yung babayaran mo liability or tax liability. Okay? So, nature and characteristics of taxation. So we have inherent power of the sovereignty, essentially a legislative function. We have also for public purposes, territorial in operation, tax exemption of the government, and it is the strongest among the inherent powers of the state of the government, and it is subject to constitutional and inherent limitations. Now, sabi dito, it is inherent power of sovereignty. Taxation is as old as government itself. Its existence commenced concurrently with the four elements of the state, okay, which are the following: people, territory, sovereignty, and government. So from the moment the state is born, it is automatically possesses the power to collect taxes from its inhabitants. Ganun siya yung nature niya ng taxation. Kaya siya, it is an inherent power of the sovereignty. Okay, so the government having sovereignty can enforce contributions upon its citizens even without a specific provision in the Constitution authorizing it kahit wala. Kasi nga inherent na siya. The moment the state is born, may power to tax na siya. Any provision in the Constitution regarding the taxation does not create rights for the sovereignty, okay, to have the power to tax, but it merely constitute limitations. Ganito na nga, uh, dahil nga inherent na siya. The moment the state is born, meron na siyang power to tax. Ano yung nasa batas natin, sir? Dahil nga broad masyado, it can tax anything, okay? Any persons or property as it wants. But because of that broad power, kaya nandoon yun sa Constitution. Hindi yun grants of rights na to power of the tax, but grants of limitations. Nililimit na yung power to tax kasi nga napaka-broad niya. Okay? So kung ano man yung nasa Constitution natin ngayon, which is the NIRC, at ngayon, ni-repeal siya or inamend, naging train law na siya. So, yun ay mga constitutional limitations. Okay? And only the national government exercises the inherent power of the taxation of the state. Local government units do not possess the inherent power. So, tandaan natin ha, yung mga LGUs natin dito don't have the inherent power but only the national government. Okay? It is also essentially a legislative function. So what does it mean? The lawmaking body of the government and its political subdivision exercise the power of taxation. So the powers to enact laws and ordinances and to impose and collect taxes are given to the Congress. Congress lang po. Ano po yung Congress? House of Representatives. Okay, every districts, municipalities, meron tayong ini-elect every 3 years that will act as your representative in the House of the Representatives at sila yung gumagawa ng batas, hindi ang Senate. Okay? Ayan. So here, since taxation is essentially a legislative function, there is a non-delegation of legislative power to tax. So hindi po siya hindi siya pwedeng i-delegate. In the strict sense, the power to make tax laws cannot be delegated to other branches of the government. Since legislative ito, hindi siya pwedeng i-delegate kay executive at saka judiciary. Okay? Yan. Since peculiarly and exclusively legislative in nature, the power to tax to make tax laws cannot be exercised by the executive or judicial branch of the government. Excuse me. So therefore, when the power to tax is delegated to local government units, only the legislative branch of the LGU can exercise. So hindi naman niya si national government lang. Same with the case with inherent power. Dito, pwede namang i-delegate kay LGU sa mga local government units natin or offices. Pero sa within that LGU, si legislative branch lang. Okay, ng LGU yung makaka-exercise ng taxation power. Also, if it is delegated to the president, it is limited only to what? Administrative discretion, which is subject to valid standards. Okay, so kapag si presidente kasi nasa executive yan, okay, na function. So, ang nadedelegate ng kay president is the administrative discretion decisions. Okay, pero may mga valid standards naman siyang binabase to make this decision valid and enforceable. So may mga examples tayo ng power to tax na hindi pwedeng i-delegate. For example, power to select the coverage, object or the property to be taxed, hindi yan pwedeng i-delegate. Determining the nature and purposes or for which the taxes shall be collected, hindi din siya pwedeng i-delegate. Okay? Determining the place or the situs of tax imposition, and as well as fixing the amount to be imposed and the tax rates. And also, hindi din pwede i-delegate yung mga nagpag-grant ng mga tax exemptions and condonations and setting down the rules of taxation in general. What may not be delegated is the power to make tax laws to a non-legislative body. So inuulit ko, yung hindi lang pwede nating i-delegate yung paggawa ng tax laws to a non-legislative body if the powers delegated are ministerial or advisory, such as power to value the property, assess and collect the taxes, they shall be allowed since they are not legislative but only administrative in nature. So hindi yung legislative, hindi magkaparehas yung legislative at saka administrative. So therefore, so we have to be specific on this. Yung hindi lang pwede ma-delegate is the power to make tax laws. Pero yung pag-implement niyan, pag-interpret, be delegated for administrative or it is an administrative in nature. So sana naintindihan yan. So that's tax administration. Okay? So ayan. If also for public purposes. Napakadali lang itong nature na to. Okay? So it is for public purpose because public taxes are public money and they must be used to finance and recognize public needs. So they are used to finance constructions and maintenance of roads, yung sinabi ko kanina, healthcare, mga murang paggamot, free education, yung mga subsidies, senior high school subsidies, and other subsidies na binibigay ng government. Okay? So security and promotion of science, commerce, and industry, and others for the welfare of the general public. So that's for public purpose. Okay? So the Supreme Court also held that the legislature has no power to appropriate public revenues. Even though they are the tax laws maker, they don't have the power to appropriate public funds. Okay? Kaya lang minsan, ayun, dahil sa mga issue na bumabalik palate because of corruption, hindi natin alam. Okay? So, kung totoo ba yan or hindi. We have also territorial in operation. The taxing authority must observe tax situs because the country's tax laws are effective effective and enforceable only within its territorial limits. Territorial limits. So may limits po yung taxation power natin. They can only tax those persons, objects, and properties or privileges na accordance lang sa scope niya. Okay, as a rule, the power to tax can only be exercised when its territorial jurisdiction of taxing authority. Except na lang if there exists a privity of relationship. What is this privity of relationship, sir? This is between the taxing state and the object of tax based on the principle of reciprocal duties. So the relationship implies contractual support or duty of care afforded by the government to its citizen residing outside the country. So where privity of relationship exists, the state can still exercise the taxing powers over a citizen outside its territory. May mga citizen kasi tayo or Pinoy na hindi naka-reside dito, naka-reside outside the country. So that's a privity relationship. Even though na hindi nakatira dito si Pilipino or si Pinoy nandun sa abroad, the country can still tax the non-resident citizen, yung Pinoy na nasa abroad, as to its income. Okay? Kasi yung citizen at saka non-resident citizen are taxable within the country and without the country. Yung mga income nila within, dito sa Pilipinas at outside the country. Yun yung ginamit natin na within and without. So, yeah. So the state cannot tax property wholly and exclusively within the jurisdiction of another state since it does not afford protection on property beyond its territorial boundaries for which a tax is supposed to compensate. So yeah, that's territorial in operation. Aside from that, we have also international committee. So what is that international committee? So this is a courteous recognition, friendly agreement, interaction, and respect accorded by one nation to the laws and institutions of another. So as a matter of international courtesy, property of one foreign state may not be taxed by another because of the principle of sovereign equality among states under international law. So that's international committee. So since one state cannot exercise its sovereign dominion over the other, a nation cannot impose taxes to properties of other nations. So an example of this international committee is the limitation on the power of taxation is the tax exemption of properties used by diplomats or head of states. Ayan. Yung mga head of states natin in the exercise of sovereign powers and diplomatic functions. So yung mga properties na yun is hindi siya taxable. Okay, in accordance with the International Committee, again, purchase recognition and friendly agreement between nations. Okay, so next, we have tax exemption of the government. So, exempted po ang government sa tax. Yes, you heard it right. Kasi naman, hindi niya pwedeng taksan yung sarili niya. Siya na government mismo. Kukolektahan niya yung sarili niya na tax. So, di ba? Makes sense. So, the government are exempt from tax. Basta lang, yung function ng is for government function only. Magiging tax exempt yan. However, if the government imposes or underwent or undergo proprietary function, okay, magiging subject siya to tax. Example niya is yung Philippine National Railways and National Power Corporation. Even though they are government, owned and controlled corporation, they are subject to tax. Why? Because they undergo proprietary functions. Okay, so ayan. We have also the strongest among the inherent powers of the government. Sinabi ko na to kanina, ayan, taxation powers, the most powerful among all. Okay, because without money, the government can neither survive nor dispense its functions. Okay, and it is also subject to constitutional and inherent limitations. Bakit ba siya subject to constitutional? Kasi nga, di ba, i-relate natin siya dito sa previous ano natin. It is the strongest among the inherent powers. Dahil nga, di ba, it is an inherent power of the sovereignty. From the moment the state is born, may power to tax na tayo. That makes it powerful and very broad in scope. Kaya, ang gagawa ng constitution or gagawa ng batas to limit the power, not to grant the power to tax. So sana naging maliwanag tayo dyan. Okay? So those are the nature and characteristics of taxation. Now, for the essential characteristics of taxes. So the essential characteristic of taxes, it is an enforced contribution, okay? And it is also imposed by legislative body and proportionate in character. Proportionate siya kasi nga kung sino yung mas mataas yung yung income, siya din yung mas mataas na babayaran ng tax. Okay, ini-impose siya ng legislative body kasi nga, di ba, the making of the tax laws is only delegated to legislative function. It is also payable in the form of money. Okay, so yung power to tax natin or the tax liability is always payable in a form of money. Ayan. Hindi po pwedeng ibayad natin is yung properties. Okay? So, by that, hindi siya pwede. So, ano ba yon yung mga binabayaran ay kino-confiscate ng mga property, sir? So, hindi naman yun as payment for liabilities. It will undergo auction. So, sa auction na yan, maghahanap ng highest bidder. And kung sino yung highest bidder, siya yung magbabayad ng fair market value ng property at yung proceeds is mapupunta doon sa tax liability mo. Okay? And it is also imposed for the purpose of raising revenue. Ayan, alam na natin yan. And it is used for public purpose. Enforced on some persons, properties, or rights, and commonly required to be paid at regular intervals. Meron tayong mga filing dates na dapat i-conform natin. May mga due dates yan, kada type ng taxes. And the last characteristic is imposed by the sovereign state within its jurisdiction. So territorial in operation talaga siya. So there you have it. Yung characteristics and essential characteristics of taxes. Now, taxes, in definition, are forced burdens, charges, exactions, and impositions or contributions assessed in accordance with some reasonable rule of appointment by authority of a sovereign state upon the person, property, or rights exercised within its jurisdiction to provide public revenues for the support of the government, administration of the law, or the payment of public expenses. So, these are 8 forced burdens. Ano ba? By the authority. Sino ang tataksan? Yung person that is liable to pay tax, or it could be property, or it could be rights. Okay? Saan? Within its jurisdiction or territory. To provide what? Public revenues. Anong gagawin sa public revenues? For the support of the government. Yung mga projects niya. And for the administration of the law or payment of public expenses. Okay, so what are the theories of taxation? We have here necessity theory or principle of necessity. Now, under this theory, tax laws are created to support the necessity of any state. Necessity meaning kailangan siya. The burden for expenses to maintain the sovereignty, services of the government, and administrative expenses must be borne by its own people. Okay? So, ayan. Necessity kailangan para ma-defray yung mga function ng government. Benefits protection. In exchange for the benefits of the received, taxes are paid by the citizen to sustain the activities. Ayan. For the improvement of the government. And we have also lifeblood theory. This theory is the lifeblood of the government because without it, the government can neither operate nor survive. Now, we have here the aspects or stages of taxation. So the following are 3 stages or aspects of taxation. First one is levying or imposition. Under this one, levying or imposition at this stage, ginagawa pa, okay, yung tax law. This is the passage of tax laws or ordinances by the Congress. Meaning sa Congress, nagmumula yung tax laws, hindi sa Senate. The Senate lang, okay, nire-review lang yung gawa ng Congress. Ayan. If na-approve naman, dito na tayo sa assessment and collection. I-implement na siya ngayon to its inhabitants, the people who are liable to pay taxes, and through agencies. Example, mga BIR or Revenue District Offices natin. And the last one is the tax payment. This is the act of compliance on the part of the taxpayers. So there you have it for the general principles of taxation. So I hope this video is helpful to you. Okay, so see you next meeting for our next video tutorial.